1 or paper 2. And then the second thing that I want to mention is this is for the benefit of the learners, because if we remove such a question that can possibly be asked in the final exam, we are actually saying to the learners that you will not come across something like this. So by leaving it there, it is also beneficial to the learner that the learner would know that I'm going to come across a question that might be new to me, where I'm assessed based on certain skills that I have been to on other applications. And that is why I was saying, like the initial teacher had said, that we don't have to scrap the entire question, but if we are to say there was something that was unfair,
All right, welcome everyone to Sirantwi Education Channel. Sorry for delaying. I believe you can all hear me now. Sorry, I'm so sorry for that. There was a meeting, and it took long memo discussion. Can you hear me again? Can you hear me now? I want to find out if everybody can hear me. All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to start, first of all, looking at the study checklist. Right, paper 2, tomorrow some provinces are starting with paper 2, and I wish you all the best. But now paper 2 becomes a little bit challenging because most of us learners do not write what is expected from the memo. So today we are going to look at the tips and some of the things that you must know for tomorrow. Right. Now, the checklist, I compiled, maybe there will be 1 or 2 topics that might not be here. But if you have any other question from any question paper that you do not understand, please don't forget to drop it also in the comment section. And I am going to address that also. So take note of that. Right. So now we start straight with the system technologies. Now, if you look at system technologies, the max allocation ranges from 25 to 50 marks. Now, with a 25 to 50 marks, you'll be asked or you'll be given a question based on the following. Right. The hardware definitions and categories, different hardware examples like input devices, output devices, storage devices, communication devices. And then also information processing cycle. They can ask you a question on any of these, like defining the input stage, the processing stage, the output stage, the storage stage, as well as the communication stage, and examples also. Right. And then also different difference between HDD, hard disk drive, and then SSD. You should know the difference between these two. For example, SSD is a newer version which is quieter and it runs faster in terms of read and write of data, and then it also consumes less energy. In other words, in terms of green computing, people always opt for SSD over HDD. Right. And then also monitors, printers, buying factors, as well as digital cameras. So monitors, printers, and then camera. You must know the buying factors. Like if you talk about the monitor, the size of the monitor, the aspect ratio, and then also the contrast ratio. Then also the printers, you must know all these. They can pick one question from any of these devices. And then we move on to other aspects like convergence and integration of input mode to enhance productivity. You should also know them. The convergence, multiple technologies combined as one, and then also integration, having so many input devices in a certain device so that there will be continuous productivity. Then different computer specifications like CPU, speed, and then the RAM size, the graphic card, different ports. Then also backup methods and cloud storage, cloud computing, as well as the troubleshooting, mouse troubleshooting, printer troubleshooting, disk errors and application errors when you are to troubleshoot them. Then performance factors of computer. So I would say computer performance factor. Like the RAM size, the speed of the CPU, the existence of the malware, caching, and then others. Then green computing in using these devices, and then input device risk like RSI, CTS, keyloggers, as well as also protecting, but that one I will include it as protecting hardware from being stolen. Right. You should know different methods of protecting hardware. So basically, the system technologies, the hardware, and the software. Then when it comes to software, different types of software, they can ask you to define either system software or application software, or get a question to name example of system software or operating system from a scenario. Then again, operating system functions like UI. UI means user interface. They provide user interface, file, memory, and process management or device management, as well as security management. So if they ask you to give at least two functions of operating system, you can list any of these. User interface, file management, or you can say provide security. Then utilities, different utility softwares like backup, firewall, antivirus, compression software. And then also application software examples, productive software, example like voice recognition and others. Then buying considerations and licensing like single user software, multi-user, SaaS, that is software as a service, and then end user license agreement. You should also know the software classifications, even though they will not ask you questions to compare them, but you can get a question in one single, let's say shareware, one example of shareware, or maybe the definition of it, but not to compare them. Or proprietary software or web-based software against installed software. Softwares that are being shared on the web and then the one that are kept on the computer. Then problems associated with software. Problems like outdated software, bad patch, compatibility issues, and then service spec. You should also know them. Then system requirement, differentiating between minimum system requirement and also recommended system requirement. Then again, metadata, that is additional information of a file. Examples of metadata from different files like pictures, examples of metadata, documents, and others. Then power supply unit versus UPS, comparing them or knowing what UPS is and then what PSU is also. So basically the system technologies are centered around these topics. And then the internet technologies and network, when, LAN, and different types of network, or GAN, or internet, the purpose, advantages, and disadvantages. Network devices like modem, router, switch, NIC, and web, you should know the functions of them or how to define them as well. And also differentiating between broadband and bandwidth, or defining what a broadband is or what a bandwidth is. And then the advantages of having a broadband like ADSL and then SDSL. We will look at that also. Then intranet versus internet. Intranet is internal network, and then internet is external. And then we also have extranet. Extranet. So extranet is also another type of network. And then we have internet services like VoIP, instant messaging, file sharing, grid computing, cloud computing, and the rest. Then different types of ways of having network like wired versus the wireless, their advantages and disadvantages. You can be given a question to compare these two also. Then internet capped or capped and capped, shaping, throttling, and then fair user policies, FUP, fair user policies also. Then ISP functions like providing internet access, spam filtering, and others. What do they do? What do they offer? Emails, and then transmission speed, data transmission speed in ADSL, SDSL, 4G, or LTE. Mostly we call 4G as LTE. And then the fiber. Then, like we discussed already, grid computing versus what? Cloud computing. Now, so these are all the network and internet technology questions that they can ask you. Right. Then when it comes to the information management, mostly the PET, 10 marks. That's the steps in gathering data, like sifting, organize, interpret, and presenting. Data versus information and knowledge. Conclusion as well. closed and open-ended question. They can ask you to differentiate or give you a question in a picture form, then you identify them. The survey versus questionnaire, searching techniques, source evaluation like authority, accuracy, currency, objectivity, and then coverage. Then spreadsheet and database, using spreadsheet and database to analyze data. They can ask you to compare them or the advantages of database over spreadsheet. You know, database has queries. That is an advantage over spreadsheet. Right. And then also presenting the solution like website. They can give you a website to also fix them. So some of these questions may arise, so you must watch them. Then we go to social implication. Now, when it comes to social implication, we have e-waste and green computing, ICT impact on health and privacy, like for instance, the RSICTS, malware types like virus, and then also spyware, ransomware, Trojan, worm, and then rootkit. Then also we have security threats like phishing, smishing, spoofing, farming, clickjacking, DOS, botnet, and then also social engineering, which is the general term to deceive people into getting sensitive information. Then the cyber crimes like the hardware theft, piracy, identity theft, bandwidth theft, and others, they can ask you questions like that. Firewall and antivirus, copyright, AUP, legal and ethical use of ICT, crowdfunding, cryptocurrencies, UCD principle. UCD stands for user-centered design principles. That is when you are designing software or you are designing a website, making sure that the users are catered for. And then accessibility and economic issues. Then the emerging or new technologies. They can ask you questions also regarding social implication. They can ask you questions regarding social implication, like AI, VR, IoT, drones, autonomous cars. Each of them, they can ask you either the definition or advantages and disadvantages. So you must know at least two of them, two advantages, two disadvantages, and also the definition. Then the last part will be the solution development, which is mostly 15 marks. Now, the solution development, we are talking about Microsoft Word, like formatting, editing, and review, mail merge. So basically, they are going to test you the skills in paper one. So you should know them. And then spreadsheet, like the different formula functions, like sum, if, VLOOKUP, they can give you a function that is having errors that you need to fix also. Then Microsoft Access tables, queries, report, validation, rule, and others. And then HTML text, links, images, and also design principles. So basically, this is the checklist that I will share it also in this document, and then you should know them when answering these questions. Right. Now I'm going to go through them. I will share this document also with you. But before that, I will check if there's any question. Please drop your questions. Okay, somebody said I must send the document. All right, let me send the document right now. I will not waste time. I will share both documents with you. I will share them right now with you. So I'm going to save it. Right. I'm going to share both documents, both the checklist and then this outline. So when you go to the link that I'm going to share with you, it has what we call the theory notes. So grade 12, I have all the theory notes there, the one that I prepared. If let's say you have forgotten them, you can also go and take it. And then I have different question papers that are there that's going to guide you. Previous question papers are there. All the previous question papers are there that you can also use. Then the study tips, I also have it here that I'm going to explain to you. The one that I shared with you the last time, I will share them. The true or false questions are there. And then also different questions. So you can get them. I'm going to share the link right now. Right, I just shared the link in the comment section so you can download it. Now, we are going straight to the topics. I will just go through some of the things that you have to know. Some you already know them, so we won't spend much time. Those that you don't know, then we will have to look at them. Right. So what I just discussed, like the hardware, the software, like I said, the definition, we know them, and then the different categories that you must know, input devices, examples. These are all mostly in the multiple choice. Then the output devices, monitor, printer, speakers, and projectors, which you need to know them also. Then the storage devices, comparing them. And then the communication devices. And then again, integration of input modes to enhance productivity. Like I said here, multiple input devices to improve productivity, and then convergence. They can ask you the advantages and disadvantages of convergent devices. When you have multiple technologies put together into one, what are the advantages? Of course, the cost is also there. You also have a lot of technologies, but then there are also disadvantages that you might also encounter, right? Battery can also run out quickly. You'll get them in the notes that I shared with you this time. Right, and then also the reasons for using computers. We use, or we have different reasons why we use computers. And then out of the reasons, here are the reasons that I listed them here. Here are the reasons: time saving, communication, and then global connectivity. Being able to talk to one another from anywhere is also one of the reasons why we use computers. Right. And then we also talk about the different types of computer users, like personal user, SOHO, mobile user, power user, and enterprise user. So you need to know what is a personal user? Somebody who use wide range of different devices to perform different tasks, which is affordable, and then they have the basic input and output devices. Then we also have the SOHO, people who use computers and printers for their small businesses at home. And then the mobile user, they are portable. You should know what kind of devices would they need, and then also what kind of software would they also need. Then, please, specification for buying decisions. CP, this is where they give you a scenario. Now, when it comes to this, the CPU is measured in gigahertz. RAM is measured in gigabyte, the size, which is volatile memory. So they can ask you to compare between these two. Right, and then also graphic card, which is measured in gigabyte, and then also the graphic processing unit for image processing. Then we have the optical drive measured in either megabyte or gigabyte. Example is CD, DVD, and Blu-ray. Ports and then readers like the USB speed, the FireWire, multi-card readers, and then the connectivity issues. Now, when you see this, A0 to the 11 ABGN, that means it supports wireless, or that is wireless protocol. Wireless protocol. So you should take note of that. And then the different peripherals like webcam, you must know the difference between the wireless keyboard and then the wired keyboard, advantages and disadvantages. And then as well as the other type of wireless devices, they can ask you. So basically, you must know comparing the wireless devices. You must know comparing wireless devices. Right. And then we also have the storage. Like I said, comparing these two storage devices, that is solid state drive, which is faster access, read and then write is always fast, and then durability, energy efficient, then the hard drive, which is cheaper per gigabyte as compared to solid state drive. So you need to know all these. You need to know all these. Right. And then we also talk about the capacities, the other storage like flash drive, DVD, memory card, and then cloud storage, back up the definitions also. So I would like you to take note of the comparing them, knowing backup, the advantages and disadvantages, and also backup media, you must know them. Then factors to consider when buying either monitor or different screens. What are the factors that you need to consider? Please, you need to know at least two. So I will urge you to highlight at least two of them. Example, the easier one that you can always remember is the size. But if they limit you with the size, you can talk about the contrast ratio or the resolution. Or you can also talk about aspect ratio. But in some instances, they will ask you to define any of these. That how can aspect ratio affect the quality of the monitor? Remember, the aspect ratio is the relationship between the width and then the height of the monitor. And then the contrast ratio is the ratio or the relationship between the darkest dark and then the whitest white on the screen. And then the resolution is measured in pixels also. Right, so you need to know all these. You need to know all these. And then connections in terms of the monitor. VGA comparing with what? HDMI. We know the HDMI support both audio and visual output, whilst VGA only support the visual output. And then also the wireless connecting without cables, they can ask you about this. Then when it comes to printers, you should also know comparing them. They won't ask you to compare inkjet with what? Laser jet. That type of question is no longer asked. But then they can ask you only maybe laser. Why would you choose laser, or why do you need a laser at a specific place in a scenario way? Or 3D printer, the advantages and then disadvantages of it. Right. Then also, we should move straight to multifunction printer. Now, when it comes to multifunction printer, a printer that can scan, fax, and then copy. A printer that can scan, that can fax, that can copy, it can also staple in some instances. Such printers can also do stapling. So you must take note of that. Right. And then the environmental tips with the printer. In other words, ensuring green computing when printing. Right. That one, they can ask you question about saving paper or saving ink. They are different. You know, whenever you are saving a paper, you must print double-sided, or you can also print maybe 2 per page. And then as for the use draft mode and the refill cartridge, that one is about saving an ink, saving an ink. So you must know that they can ask you to explain one of these. How can a printer, using a printer, save an ink? So that one you have to refill cartridges, also using draft mode, printing in a small font size. So you need to also know some of these type of questions. Like I said earlier, the digital camera, that's the webcam. Factors to consider: resolution, ISO rating, sensor size, and then also others. So you must know at least one or two. Then the scanner and then the different scanning devices. Now, when it comes to scanner and different scanning devices, right, we are talking about the flatbed, sheet fed, and then also barcode scanner, QR code scanner, RFID scanner, and then NFC, magnetic readers. You should know the advantages, disadvantages of all these. QR code, quick response. That one is a type of a scanner that links, in other words, to an email or to a website. Then we have the RFID, NFC, biometric scanners. You should know them also as well. Right. Troubleshooting. When it comes to troubleshooting, you have to know the following. With regards to the troubleshooting, you must know the mouse issue. Mouse issue, when your mouse is not working properly, it could be the battery or maybe the wireless connectivity or the wireless signal is lost, or if you are far. So you must know some of these. They can give you in a scenario way. The scanning issues, resolution problems, printing problems, disk errors, and then also non-responding apps. Non-responding apps. Right. Now, scanning issues, resolution problem, printing, all this, you must know how to solve these common problems, which I listed also in the notes that I shared with you earlier, which you will find them in this particular link. You will see that note, term 3 notes. All this place, you will see term 1, term 2, term 3 notes. And then the questions that I said, also you'll find them as well as the June and other winter questions. You will see all of them here. Now, let me check from here, if you have any question, because we are almost there regarding the first aspect. If you have any question, don't forget to drop them, then I will check them for you. Yeah, somebody said, isn't communication and global connectivity the same thing? Yes, they are the same. Global connectivity, that means connecting to one another. But then communication is just more or less like a shorter. You can communicate with someone within South Africa, but then here we are talking about staying in South Africa and also being able to connect with someone overseas or anywhere, though it's part of the communication, but this one is a broader one. Right. Now, the next question is, or the next aspect that we are going to talk about will be Like here, I listed them. When you are checking the power, you will see them here. Voice and then speech recognition. Voice and then speech recognition. Now, the voice recognition, you must know the difference, the advantages and disadvantages. Voice recognition, they identify spoken words, and then the speech recognition the voice identifies a unique voice for security. Speech recognition identifies spoken words. So now, look at this. They can ask you to differentiate between these two. Differentiate between voice recognition and speech recognition. One thing that you must know is that the voice is mostly for security and the speech recognition is mostly for like accessibility. Let's say you speak and they need to convert to text or something for you. Right. Then factors affecting the computer performance. What factors are affecting the performance of the computer? One is the RAM, the CPU. When you have more RAM in the computer, then it's going to also have consequence in the speed of your computer. Then the CPU speed, the higher speed means faster processing, and then the caching, faster access to frequently used data is also one factor. And then also disk space. When you don't have enough space, it's going to affect your computer performance. And then the presence of malware also will help you. So you must know some of these things when they ask you to give two factors that affect the overall performance of the computer. Right, then the essential or basic hardware component. This question, sometimes it confuses learners when they ask you to list basic component. Sometimes they won't say essential component. Basic component, that means part of the computer. It is different from the factors. So you can see here the factors are added malware and then the app running at the background. But when it comes to the basic component, that is devices that are inside the computer that will affect the performance of the computer. And that one is the CPU, the RAM, the storage, it could be HDD or SSD. Then risk with input devices like the CTS, RSI, keylogger, how to prevent them. You must know prevention tips also. Then green computing, tips for ensuring green computing, like saving paper, energy efficiency, and then the e-waste. You must know some of these tips in using various devices. Then the software, like I said, software, you have to know what a software is, different types of software, the operating system that manages hardware and software, then examples of operating system and the functions of OS. Like I said, the easier one will be security, providing login. This one, I believe everybody can remember this. And then you can say device management or hardware management. Then you can also remember this user interface, or in short, you can say graphical user interface. Right. And then also driver, software that make operating system communicate with the hardware. Example is the printer driver, sound card driver, network driver. So you should know the definition of a driver and also maybe examples. Then the utility softwares, they are like asking this type of questions. Either the definition of a task scheduler in a scenario way, compression, why do you compress software? And then also backup or maybe defragmentation. What is the need of defragmentation? Remember, defragmentation is rearranging scattered files on the disk to speed up the computer. And you should know that defragmentation is only applied to hard disk drive. We don't defragment regarding to SSD. For SSD, we do what we call optimized drive. So defragmentation is only done on hard drive. And then the disk cleanup, delete unnecessary files to also ensure that you have enough space. So disk cleanup gives enough space. Defragmenter only speed up the computer. So you should know this. And then the practical one that, like I said, that one is mainly the software. In most cases, they ask this type of question in multiple choice. You don't get them in a short answer questions. Then the productivity software, like I said, voice recognition. When do we need voice recognition and others? And then buying decisions, licensing types like single user. It allows one person to use the software on one device. So it allows you to have it on one device. And then also multi-user license, they permit multiple users to access the software on a network. So here, multi-user and single user is different from single license. So this one here, it allows multiple users to access a software on a network. Right. And then we also have the site license, which allows organizations to install software and use them on multiple computers. And then the SaaS, software as a service, software delivered over the internet, accessed through the web browser. So this SaaS allow you to use this software over a browser. So you should know some of these questions also. Right. Then we go to EULA, End User License Agreement, which is the legal contract between the software developer and the user who practice or who purchase the software. So which defines the terms under which the software can be used, what you can do with the software and what you cannot do with the software also. So you have to know them very well. Right. And then we move straight to the next one, which is integrated software and then freeware. You must know that, like I said, they won't ask you to compare this type of software, but you have to know them. You must definitely know them. Then the web-based, this is what they normally ask, web-based software. The keyword is a software. So when you are defining it, you must start with the keyword a software. And what does it do? They are accessed through a web browser over internet. So these are the keywords if they ask you to define that. Right. And then we also have installed software. The software must be downloaded and installed on a device. So here, these software are kept on your local device, which is different from the one that can be accessed on the internet. So the web-based software, a typical example is Microsoft Office 365, Gmail, Google Forms, and others. Any software that you can only get it on the internet. And then the outdated software, which is the software or hardware that is no longer current, and then they lack different support. Example is Windows 7. Windows 7 is an older version, so you have to know what an outdated software is. Right. Any questions so far before I proceed? If you have any question. All right, someone said, should I increase the font size? Right, okay, thank you. Let me increase the font size. I want to increase the font size for you. There's a lot, like I said, some of them I will just skip them. You read them. So where there's a challenge, please don't forget to ask. If you have a specific question that you want to also to be addressed, you can ask. Then I'm going to address that type of question also. Right, then go to different software problems like bug. When you say bug is a software error. So the error that we find ourselves when we are using software is called bug. And bug mostly can cause incorrect or unexpected results in a software. Then how do we fix these bugs? We can fix these bugs, one, by installing what we call an update, which is called patch. Then when we have a collection of different updates or patches over a period of time is called service pack. So they can ask you to differentiate between a patch and then a service pack. A patch is an update that fixes bugs, whilst the service pack is a collection of updates over a certain period of time. Then also compatibility issues. The ability of a software or hardware to work. So the first one is software or hardware working with other systems or devices. So like I always say, identify the keywords. Identify the keywords. Example is a printer driver working with Windows 11. So that is the compatibility. But then the backward compatibility is the ability of a newer software or hardware to work with the programs or devices in an older version. So for example, if you have Microsoft Word 2021, being able to open a Word file 2003, that is what we call the backward compatibility. Or you have Office 365, and then you are able to use Office 365 to open Microsoft Word question or data that was saved in 2007. Then that is what we call the backward compatibility. You can even give an example. Try to convince the one who is going to mark your paper. And then again, we also look at then we are also looking at the read-only hidden files. Now the read-only, when it comes to the read-only file that can be viewed but not edited. So here, they can be viewed. You can see it, but you cannot edit it. And that is called the read-only files. Then the hidden files, files not visible to users, usually for security reasons. So you must know between the difference between read-only and hidden files. Read-only and hidden files. Then we move straight to the system requirement, minimum system requirement versus recommended system requirement. Now, the keyword, like I always say, you must know the keyword. You should know the keyword. You must know the keyword. The list hardware and software. So that's the first one when you're defining this. The list hardware and software needed for a program. Another keyword is this one, to run. So if you are given a question to explain what is a minimum system requirement, the list hardware and software needed or you can list hardware and software for a program or software to run at all. And that's what we call the minimum system requirement. Then when it comes to the recommended, this one's the ideal hardware or software for the best performance, or in other words, so here is just the list one. That is, for instance, 4 GB RAM to start a game. That's the minimum that you can do. But when it comes to the recommended, for it to perform better, you need about 8 gig RAM and a dedicated graphic. So that's the difference. Recommended is the ideal one for it to perform better, but in the least one for you to be able to install. And a typical example, let's say you try to install Windows 11. Now they will check what will be the minimum size of the hard drive or storage that you need, and then the RAM size and CPU speed that is needed. And that is the least one, which is the minimum system requirement. But you might be able to install the Windows 10. But because you don't have enough space left, it might be slow. So that is not recommended one for you. So that is the difference between the system requirement, which is the minimum, and the recommended system requirement. Right. Now we move straight to the next one, which is the metadata. Like I said, metadata is additional information of a file. Additional information of a file. Now, which describes other information of a file. It describes other information of a file. Example is maybe the file size, the location, the author, and others. So they can ask you to give examples of it. Right, then we go to the difference between VGA and also HDMI. VGA and HDMI. To compare these two, comparing VGA to HDMI, and then comparing PSU, which is the power supply unit, or sometimes called the permanent power supply. And then we also have the UPS, which is uninterruptible power supply. You should know how to compare these, at least the UPS gives a backup power, and then this one gives the permanent supply. That's the permanent supply unit. Then the PSU, that's the internal component that supply permanent power to your computer, but this one is just a backup in case your computer goes off, or the main energy or the main power supply to your computer goes off. Then what will be mostly like a backup that is added to your computer so that you can be able to save your work. So it allows you to save your work and also protect your computer against these power surges. So you should know these two, UPS and PSU. Right. Now, this is all about the first part that you should know, comparing them. And then when it comes to the internet technologies, digital communications, which you need to know them. You must know digital communications, different communication devices, web browser, like this one, add-on and extension. When we talk about add-ons or extension, those are the small programs that add different features. Example is the Grammarly extension for Chrome and other part of the extensions. And then also pop-up blockers, homepage settings, history, favorite. You must know the difference between favorite and history. The history records visited websites. Like example, let's say you keep on visiting YouTube for Sirantwi videos. So those ones will be your history. Now the favorite is the saved one for quick access. So you have to save them. When you add it to your favorite, then it will always be there for quick access. But the bookmark, save website address for also easy access. Now, mostly the bookmark, and then this favorite is mostly for Internet Explorer, and the bookmark is for Chrome. Right. Now, caching is storing website data locally for faster loading. And that is what we call the caching or caching. Now, last year there was a question regarding high priority and then flagging. And most learners could not answer this type of questions. Most learners could not answer this type of questions. So you must know high priority is marking a task or email or message as urgent or important. And then flagging is to highlight for a follow-up or review. So that's the difference between these two. Social network and others, you should know them also. Then wireless technologies like WiMAX, which is the long range Wi-Fi. And then we also have the hotspot, which is the public internet access, and then GPS. Then the internet attacks, you have to also know that the DOS attack, the sniffer attacks, and others. Then the network technologies, here we are talking about when, LAN. You must know the advantages of all this. Remember, the main purpose of having a network is to share resources. Now, again, you can also have it to communicate between two or more people. So communication and sharing of resources. But then the disadvantages are security risk. So if they ask you a question about the disadvantage of a network, you have to say security risk or security issues. Don't just be specific by saying hacking and what. No, just say security issues or security concerns. Or you can say security risk. That's the broader one. Don't try to make it to be specific. Right, network devices like modem, a switch connects devices or computers together in a network. A router connects different networks together. And wireless access point, they connect devices to a wireless network, either through a cable or wireless link. So that is what's called an access point. And this one, NIC is a hardware component. The difference between NIC and these ones is that NIC is part of the computer system. So you start by saying it's a hardware component, not just a device. It's a hardware component which allow computers to connect to a network. It's different from a switch. A switch is a device that connects different computers together in a network. But this is a component there which allows a computer to connect. Now, broadband versus bandwidth. Broadband is a high-speed internet connection. So this is the definition of broadband, a high-speed internet connection, or you can say a high-speed permanent internet connection. But the bandwidth is the amount of data transferred over a specific period of time. So the amount of data that's been transferred is called what? Bandwidth. But then the broadband is the high-speed internet connection. And then again, solid-state drive versus SDSL and then ADSL. These two are part of what? Broadband. These are all part of broadband. So broadband examples are SSD, ADSL, sorry for saying SSD. Examples of broadband are SDSL, which stands for Symmetric Digital Subscriber Line. Here, both speed are the same. That's the download speed and upload speed are the same. But ADSL, Asymmetric Digital Subscriber Line, the speeds are not the same. In other words, the download speed is faster than the upload speed. The speeds are not the same. And that is the ADSL. Right. You should be able to also compare the intranet, and then internet. Like we said, the intranet is a private network which is accessible only to an organization member. So an intranet is not available to public. It's only for internal organizations, the people who are working there. Right. And then also we have the internet, which is the global public network that connects millions of private and then different academic and businesses together. So internet is public, whilst the intranet is what? Internal network. Right. Then we move straight to internet services. But then before I proceed, I will check whether if anyone has a question for me. And then also intranet, they are only accessible for employees. So if you are an employee and then you go back home, you are not able to get some of the information. And for you to get some of the information, you need what we call VPN. It's only VPN that will allow you to get access to some of the information if you are using intranet. Then different internet services that we have. In other words, when using internet, what are some of the services that you can get access to? But before I proceed, let me ask if there's any question. Someone said, those that I skip. Yeah, those ones are just the basic ones that's why I skip. Those ones are not challenging ones. So you should know them, but then it's mostly asked in the multiple choice or matching column. So I was just going through the one that needs to pay attention to the definition and then also the advantages and disadvantages also. Now, the voice over internet protocol, VoIP, which converts voice into data for transmission through the internet. Example is the Skype, Hangout, Zoom, Teams, and others. So these are softwares which allow you to communicate. You can also include WhatsApp calls, not just WhatsApp. WhatsApp is instant messaging, but then WhatsApp calling is part of VoIP. Then FTP, File Transfer Protocol, which allows you to transfer files through the internet. An example is the FileZilla and others. Then we also have the file sharing, accessing or sharing files between users. Example is the one given to you over there. So if you want to share files through the internet and using different users, then some of these like Zenda and then share it. Those are part of the software for sharing files. And then the great computing sometimes is also referred as distributed computing. Distributed computing using multiple resources or computer resources in different locations to solve a single problem or for a common goal. So here the keyword is when you use resources, we mean the computer resource in different locations for a common goal. So these are the keywords. Examples for weather forecasting or earthquake. So we use distributed or great computing in these high processing demanding services, right? So meaning that when maybe one server somewhere is having problem in terms of speed in processing, through the network, they will be able to share the other high processing server from somewhere, and then they'll be able to effect or do that particular processing well, right? And then that's the keywords there, and you must know the advantages and disadvantages of this. That means idle or unused resources can be what? Utilized. One advantage is that unused resources can be utilized. Or you can say idle resources can be effectively what? Used. So these are the advantages and then some of the disadvantages. Then the cable and then the wired connection. Like I said, you should be able to connect, compare both. Right now, the cabled one is cheaper and then more reliable and faster transfer. But then the disadvantage is you have a fixed location and then the setup is difficult and then you get a messy cable. Then the wireless one, you can work in areas where cables are difficult to install, and then you can be portable also. So you should know how to compare this in terms of the advantages and disadvantages. They can ask you, you must just pick two. Like I always say, you don't need to pick so many. You don't need to know so many of them, at least two for each. So you have to highlight them. If like you are dealing with cable, you just know this. More reliable and the faster transfer rate. That one, I believe you can easily remember that. And then the disadvantages also fixed location. You can easily remember it. And the messy cable. Now, cap and bundles. When we say cap, that's the internet plan with a fixed data limit per month. Or the keyword is fixed data limit per month. We call it cap. So you need to highlight this fixed data limit per month. Example is when you are given 100 gigabytes per month by your ISP. So that is cap. Now, uncapped is unlimited. There's no set data limit. Or you can say unlimited amount of data per month. Or you can say over a specific period. Because there can be uncapped that is not necessary lasting for a month. They can be for only a week or 2 weeks. So that is uncapped. Now, the soft cap data limit, when it's used up, then you can still use it in certain services. So that is soft cap. But then hard cap, the moment your data limit is reached or is used up, you cannot use any internet service. In other words, all your internet services will be offline. You cannot use any services. Then bundle also. What is bundle? So you must know how to compare bundle with the cap. When you talk about bundle, that one you buy it separately. Example is 1 gigabyte daily bundle from mobile service providers, or sometimes a bundle can be a collection. Like they give you data and then they give you also airtime to make a call. So they are all put together as one, and then you purchase from the service provider. Then we move straight to shaping. When we talk about shape and then unshape, shaping is preferences given to certain internet services. When you prioritize certain services over others, we call it shaping. Example is when you give streaming site faster speed than when you are downloading. Like when you go to YouTube streaming, the speed becomes faster, but when you are downloading movies, the internet speed becomes slower. So we call it to shape. And unshape is they give you equal internet services in terms of prioritization. That is, there is equal internet service preferences. So the easier way to remember, equal internet equal internet services preference. So this is what we call what? Shape. And shape. So if I ask you to define this, or they ask you, is equal internet service preferences. And then shape is unequal internet service preferences. Remember, we only focus on the keywords. So you stick to the keywords. Then throttling. Throttling is intentionally slowing down. Who is slowing down intentionally? ISP. So you can add that one. When an ISP intentionally slows down your internet speed, we call it throttling. So mostly throttling is applied to soft cap or maybe cap. So you can see that they can give this type of question in a scenario or question 9 or 10. And then they will ask you why is a cap, or why is maybe a data or cap given to you that are on throttling, and then the one that is uncapped. Now you ask yourself, why would service provider slow down the speed of a capped services? Because the cap, they have given you a fixed amount of data, let's say 100 gig per month. So there's no need for them to slow down your speed, because the faster the speed, the easier or the faster your data bundles will be used up. So if they slow down, that means within a month, you can use your data bundles without buying any other data again. But for uncapped, they will perform what we call throttling, because it's unlimited. You are going to use it within 1 month, meaning there's no need for you to buy any data. So that is why they apply throttling on uncapped but not capped. So you have to take note of that also. So here I'm going to add here, mostly or in most cases, throttling is applied on cap. So throttling is applied on cap, so you should take note of that. I'm adding it to the notes. Then fair user policy. This is a policy that ISP, they normally set up that limits heavy user to ensure fair speed for everyone. In other words, they slow down the user to stream, like example 24/7, to give others a better bandwidth. So maybe if they see that you are using the data for a lot of things or too much, then they have to slow down. Then they also give others a faster speed. And that is why we call the fair usage policy. Of course, it has a disadvantage to you as a customer, but then for the service providers, they are good because they are able to distribute them perfectly. Now, the data transmission speed, the speed at which data travels from one point to another. The higher the data transmission speed, the smoother the HD streaming, and also support many users without lag or faster cloud syncing. So if you have a faster data transmission speed, always you'll be able to have a good streaming and then do a lot of internet services online. Now, ISP, what's the definition of ISP? You must also know that it's a company. ISP is a company. That's the first keyword. What do they do? Anytime you are defining something, classify it, whether it's a software, hardware, or a business, or what. What do they do? And then you give the function. They provide internet services at a monthly fee. And you must know their functions, or you can say the advantages and disadvantages. You can say the functions or services that they provide. They manage connections, installations, regular support, providing email, web hosting, and others. But then there are limitations also, you must look at that. Then downloading and uploading. Downloading is when you copy file from another computer to or from internet server to your device, and uploading, sending from your device to internet or a server. So that is all about the network and internet services, which is plus or minus 20 or 25 marks, because 15 marks will be question 5, and then also 9 and 10, there will always be a question on internet and then network. Then information management, like I said, 10 marks, and then sometimes you can get information management questions in question 9 and 10. Finding data, that's defining data and information. Sources of information like print media, electronic, website, and others. Being able to differentiate between these 4: knowledge, information, data. You must know it. They also ask questions on that. And then also the task definition, like phase 1, your PET phase 1, your PET phase 2. They will pick questions there, the focus question, research questions, why are research questions needed? And then the levels of thinking or questions. Then comparing open-ended questions and then the closed-ended questions. Why do we need closed-ended questions? For easier analysis, because if you have yes and no, it's easy to analyze as compared to asking people their opinion. Very difficult to analyze. Then also information and data gathering. Example is the survey and questionnaire. The difference between a survey and then a questionnaire. Remember, a questionnaire is just a tool we use to conduct what? A survey. So that's why a questionnaire is not a source of information. A survey can be a source, but a questionnaire is not a source of information. We use that tool to gather or to get that information. Right. And then the searching techniques, like using the plus minus when you are searching for information online. Then quality control, author date updated, and others. Why do we need a current date or currency of the information? Why do we need, or when will we need information that is old, maybe for historical reasons and others? So watch out for those type of questions also. Now, chart element, the spreadsheet chart element, they can also ask a question on that. Advantages and disadvantages of using spreadsheet, and advantages and disadvantages of using database. Spreadsheet is easy to use, good for small, medium data analysis. We have the chart and flexible layout of the format. But in terms of processing data also, queries, you can't find it in spreadsheet. So if they ask you a question, why would you need database instead of spreadsheet for processing data? It has queries, and you can also do grouping calculations and others. It doesn't mean that there's no calculations in spreadsheet. There is calculations, but to group, that's the aggregate function, you need what we call the database in order to do that. Right. Then analyzing data, and then also the report organization. You have to know that the referencing plagiarism, then the website, the layout. So they can ask you question also on that. Now we move straight to the last part, which is the social implications. And that one, sometimes the question can be, the total mark can be 10 or more. But before that, let me check if there is any question. If you have any question, someone says, may you please highlight the important points and send the updated. Yes, I will do that. As soon as I'm done with this lesson, I am going to send you the highlighted, the keywords to you. Right. The social implications. That one ranges from responsible disposal and environmental impact, and the impact of ICT on different society or users. You have to know them, like the negative one, the software and security, like malware types, and then also the hardware, and then the data theft, legal consequences, phishing, and then securing online transactions, and then also antivirus and different things. Then the network securities, like the botnet, DOS attack. Now, when you talk about the botnet, DOS attack, spoofing, clickjacking, like I said, you need to know social engineering. Social engineering, deceiving someone into getting sensitive information. And social engineering can be in different forms, like phishing, whereby they use fake email to deceive people into getting sensitive information. Farming, deceiving people into getting sensitive information using a website or a link. And then clickjacking, using a concealed link, spoofing, faking the email header to deceive people, and smishing and other vision and others. So I'm going to also highlight them, like you said. Data protection, ethical use, and the collecting data also. Computing concept like virus, you must know them. Accessibility options for different users is also part of the social implications. And then the new technologies for social implications like DOS attacks and others, you have to know them. Right. I listed here also different social engineer like baiting. They can ask you to define it. You have to know them. Right. That is all about all that you need to know is the definition, the keywords, which I have summarized them here. You have to know them. Then the solution development, like I said, practicals. That one may come from any form. They can mix them like spreadsheet and database questions. Then you apply your knowledge in practicals. You have to apply practical knowledge in dealing with this type of questions. So I've just highlighted them here. Like somebody asked, I'm going to emphasize them more. Right. You just go through them, HTML and all of them. Then the new terminologies. Always, every question paper, even your final, one or two new terminologies will be there. I already explained them. HDMI, we talk about that. Multi-touch, NFC, wireless protocols, URL shortener, a tool that converts long URL into a shorter one. IoT, network or device being connected to the network or internet. You must know them, their advantages and disadvantages. 3D printer, autonomous vehicle shaping, we discussed already. Drone, clickjacking, ransomware, wearable devices, crowdfunding, big data. This one very important. When you talk about big data, not just data, just very large data size or data set that can be analyzed. And when you analyze, what does it do to reveal trends? And then M-learning and VR, BYOD, bring your own device, whereby learners and employees are allowed to bring their devices for learning or for work. Their advantages and disadvantages, like security risk. 4IR and blockchain. Blockchain definition also, which is the distributed ledger technology or secured transactions. So you have to know all these. Please, I'll highlight them and I will send them back to you. When you go through this, I promise you, none of your theory will be difficult for you. But like I said, don't leave any question unattended. May always check for negative. Let's say there can be a question whereby they negate the question. And then also learn to know at least two of them when they are talking about the advantages and disadvantages. So you must know the terminologies, the definition, advantages, and disadvantages. Right. If you have any question regarding the theory, you may ask, then I will explain it. Like I said, I'll highlight the important one, like what somebody said. And you have to also go through this for me. There are a lot of questions that I shared over here. That link, you get so many questions. You can start with multiple. Just study, know the concept first before you start, and then use my theory for the one that I said for June, which is also here, and also the one that I said for you, this prep. Use both, and then you answer most of the questions also. You will find them here. Then there was another one that I also shared. You will also find it, but I'll put it also in the WhatsApp group. If you are struggling to download them, I'll put it in Sirantwi Education WhatsApp group also, some of the questions and this note. So if you don't have any question, we will end here. Then I will interact with you. Yes, I'm going to highlight them in both groups in this link. I will highlight them and put them on this link, and also share in the WhatsApp group. If there's no question, we will end the lesson here so that you do your final touches for tomorrow. Right. There's no question. Thank you for your precious time. Good night and all the best tomorrow.